All right, so today we're diving into some data that's honestly pretty surprising. We're talking about a 5% drop in first-year college enrollment. 5%. Across the entire U.S.
Yeah, that is a big number.
That's huge. Like, seriously, the biggest decline we've seen since the pandemic kind of threw everything for a loop back in 2020.
And what's interesting is, it's not just like a little blip, right?
Hmm.
Because for the past 3 years, enrollment was actually going up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this data from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, that's really showing us like a turning point.
Interesting.
And it's got people who know their stuff, people like Kim Cook, she's the head of the National College Attainment Network, calling this a wake-up call. A wake-up call for the whole higher education system.
Yeah, I mean, when you see a shift that big, you got to pay attention. And it's not like it's just one state that's having a bad year or something. This is happening all over.
That's right. It's a nationwide trend.
Yeah, some states are seeing double-digit drops. Can you imagine, like, if you're running a university in a place like Wyoming or Nebraska, they've got over 17% fewer freshmen walking around this year.
Yeah, it's really shaking things up.
Wow.
And, connecting it to the bigger picture, we see a 6% drop, specifically in four-year college enrollment. Like the traditional path a lot of people think of.
Right.
And that makes you think, okay, what does the future hold for those schools? And Doug Shapiro from the Clearinghouse, he's especially concerned about that.
So if you're out there listening and thinking, okay, but WHO is not going to college, is it like a specific type of student? We'll get this. It's not just one group. It's across the board.
Yeah.
We're talking all kinds of schools, income levels, genders, racial groups. It's like everybody hit the pause button at the same time.
It really is like, widespread, this trend. And here's something that might surprise people. There's actually been a pretty big drop in Asian American first-year enrollment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Especially at those super selective, very competitive colleges. And you might think, wait a minute, didn't the Supreme Court just rule against affirmative action? Shouldn't that mean more Asian American students are getting in now?
Right, right.
But the data is telling a different story.
Huh. So something else is going on.
There's other factors at play there.
Yeah, definitely more to it than meets the eye, especially if you're Asian American. And, it's not just them. Black student enrollment also took a hit. And in some categories, it was even steeper than the decline for white students. And that's a trend that makes you stop and think, especially given all the historical barriers Black students have faced getting into college.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another potential culprit, something that might hit home for folks out there who are thinking about college affordability: financial aid.
Okay, yeah, that's always a big one.
Big one, yeah.
Yeah.
The report shows this worrying drop in students going to schools that have a lot of Pell Grant recipients. So we're talking about places like HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities.
Right, right.
And your more regional, less famous state schools.
Okay, so less selective schools. So wait, are you saying there's a connection between this drop and that whole disaster that was the AFSES website rollout this year?
Yeah.
Because I remember that. It was a total nightmare. Delays, glitches, nobody answering the phones, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that these two things are happening at the same time. The Government Accountability Office, they found that whole FAFSA mess actually led to a 9% drop in first-time applications.
Wow.
That's a lot. We're talking 432,000 fewer applications overall. And Mike Neitzel, who is an expert in higher education, he points out that low-income students, they got hit the hardest by this because they rely more heavily on financial aid to even make college a possibility.
Right, if they can't even apply.
Exactly. They can't even get in the game. Bill DeBon from the National College Attainment Network, he suggested that, if the FAFSA rollout had been normal like any other year, we might not even be seeing this decline.
Interesting. So this wasn't inevitable.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
And it just really underscores how crucial financial aid is. It's often the make or break factor.
It's like that key that unlocks the door.
Exactly.
And this isn't just some, theoretical thing, right? This is directly impacting whether or not someone can get their bachelor's degree. Like Shapiro was saying, it's a real barrier.
Absolutely. But, it's not just about the FAFSA. It's not just about that one website. There are other pieces to this puzzle.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, we can't ignore this thing called the demographic cliff. Have you heard about this?
The demographic cliff.
Yeah, it's this projected drop in high school graduates that's coming up in the next few years.
Oh, right. I had heard about that.
But here's the thing. This current drop in college enrollment, that's happening before that cliff even hits.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that just makes the whole situation even more concerning.
So fewer students are applying now, maybe because of that FAFSA mess, but then there's also going to be fewer students overall in the coming years.
Exactly. It's like a double whammy for these colleges.
Yeah, that's rough.
And, DeBon also points out that this drop in enrollment, it doesn't just disappear, it has a ripple effect. It impacts college finances. Less tuition money coming in means tighter budgets, maybe program cuts, staff layoffs. It could be really tough.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody wants to see that.
And then on top of all that, we've got this really strong economy right now. Businesses are practically begging for workers, and they're offering higher starting wages than we've seen in a while. So if you're a young person looking at all of this, why wouldn't you just jump straight into the workforce and start earning money? You know, who needs all that student debt?
Right, that's a really good point. It's tempting.
Very tempting. And it kind of challenges that traditional idea that a college degree is this, like automatic ticket to success. And then you add to that, there's this growing public skepticism about the value of a college degree in the first place.
Yeah, you see articles about that all the time.
Exactly. We've seen reports about this here in places like University World News.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clear that perceptions are shifting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it's like this perfect storm brewing, AFSO troubles, a hot job market, and people starting to wonder if college is even worth it anymore. It's a lot to unpack and makes you wonder what happens to these students who aren't going to college now. Do they ever end up going later?
That's the big question. And Shapir's prediction is actually pretty sobering. He says, based on what happened in 2020, it's unlikely those missing freshmen will enroll later. He even calls it a potential second great loss to the nation's workforce.
Wow, that's a heavy thought. We're
Yeah.
talking about a whole generation potentially missing out on the benefits of higher ed. But before we get too doom and gloom, let's take a step back and just kind of recap what we've learned so far.
Okay, yeah. So we've got this significant decline in first-year enrollment, the FAFSA debacle. That definitely played a role, especially for those who depend on financial aid to make college happen. But it's not the only factor, right? That hot job market, shifting views on college, and the demographic cliff on the horizon, all of those things are adding to this complicated picture. Right. It's complex. It's not simple.
Not simple at all.
It's easy to get lost in all the numbers and percentages.
Right.
But we can't forget that, behind every single one of those missing freshmen, there's an actual person with their own dreams and challenges and everything.
Yeah, they're not just data points, right? It's people's lives.
Exactly. Every single one of them has the potential to bring something unique to the world.
And this whole decline, it could end up having these ripple effects that go way beyond just those individuals.
Oh, you mean like a chain reaction kind of thing?
Exactly. Like what happens if fewer people are getting those college degrees? Think about certain industries that need like highly skilled workers. We could start seeing shortages in those fields.
Which would then impact what, like innovation? Slow down the economy, maybe?
Absolutely. And it could affect scientific advancements even, or
Yeah.
technological breakthroughs. It's all connected, like a domino effect.
And it's not just the workforce. Higher education, it plays a huge role in research, community involvement, even cultural development.
Yeah.
A drop in enrollment could affect those areas too.
Sure.
So it's bigger than just like, do I go to college or not? It's like the whole fabric of society is kind of tied up in this.
Absolutely. And it means we need to have a deeper conversation about what higher education even means.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, let's be honest about the benefits and the limitations.
Yeah.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right. We need to move past those overly simple slogans like everyone needs to go to college or college is a waste of time.
Right.
Because neither one of those tells the whole story.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what's the right path for each age person. Maybe it is a traditional four-year college.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe it's a vocational program, an apprenticeship, something completely different. The key is making sure everyone has the support they need.
The resources to actually succeed, whatever they choose.
Right, whatever path they're on.
Yeah. And it's not enough to just sit around complaining about these numbers going down, right? We've got to do something.
Absolutely. We need to take action. We need to address the root causes.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's going to take everyone working together. Policymakers, educators, employers, individuals themselves.
So it's about creating a system that actually supports all those different pathways to success.
Right. And it's about creating a culture that values learning, always learning, adapting, the desire to grow both personally and as a society.
That sounds like a pretty big shift.
It is. It is a big shift. It's about questioning our assumptions about education, about work, even about the future itself.
Wow, that's deep. This is a lot to take in. But it's obvious that this decline in college enrollment, it's not just some random statistic.
It's not.
It reflects something bigger, these deeper changes and challenges that we have to face.
It's a call to action. We've got to create a more inclusive education system, one that's ready for the future, and one that actually works for everybody.
So where do we go from here? What can people do about all this? Students, families, policymakers, institutions, everyone.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And while there isn't just one easy answer, there are some promising things we could try.
Okay, so let's start with individuals. What can students and their families do to navigate all this?
Well, first of all, you've got to make informed decisions, do your research right, explore all those different paths, not just the traditional college route.
Yeah, don't be afraid to think outside the box. Apprenticeships, online learning, all those things.
Exactly. Think about your interests, your goals, weigh the pros and cons.
And don't forget about the financial side of things.
Yeah, big one. Look at all the options. Scholarships, grants, work-study programs. And if you do take out loans, be smart about it.
So basically, take control of your own education, right?
Exactly. Be proactive.
Okay, so that's for individuals. What about the colleges and universities themselves? What can they do to adapt?
Well, they need to be more responsive to what students are looking for now. More flexible programs, more affordable options.
And they have to prove that their programs are actually worth it,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to jobs and stuff.
Right. Transparency is key. Students need to know what they're getting into. Costs, graduation rates, job placements, all of that.
And they need support too. Advising, counseling, financial literacy, things like that.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that students, they're all different backgrounds, different goals, different learning styles. That one-size-fits-all approach, that doesn't work anymore.
Okay, now what about policymakers? Where do they fit in?
Well, they have a huge responsibility. They need to make sure that everyone can actually afford a quality education.
Okay, so that means more investment in early childhood education, improving K-12 schools, making college more affordable.
Exactly.
Okay. What about encouraging employers to get involved, to invest in their employees' training?
Absolutely. Education isn't just about personal advancement, it's about national competitiveness.
Yeah.
We need everyone to be learning and growing.
So we've talked about individuals, institutions, and policymakers. But what about society as a whole? What kind of changes need to happen there?
Well, we need to get rid of this idea that a four-year degree is the only path to a successful life.
Right. We need to value all kinds of skills, all kinds of knowledge, not just what you get in a classroom.
Absolutely.
And we need to embrace lifelong learning, being adaptable.
And we need a society that supports everyone in reaching their potential, no matter what.
That's a big challenge.
It is. But it's a challenge we have to take on if we want a better future. For everyone.
I agree. So this has been a really thought-provoking conversation. And while we've covered a lot of ground, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. This is an issue that deserves a lot more attention and discussion.
So we encourage all our listeners to check out the source material that we've provided in the show notes. There's so much more detail there that we didn't have time to cover. And keep the conversation going. Talk to people about this.
Yes. Talk about the future of education, the future of work. What do you think needs to happen?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them on social media. Use the hashtag #DeepDiveEducation.
Yes.
And remember, this isn't just about statistics. It's about real people, real lives, and the future of our society.
Let's work together to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
All right, so we've talked about the challenges and some possible solutions, but, here's the big question. What does all this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, that's kind of the point, right? It's not just about understanding what's going on. It's about getting you to think
Yeah.
and maybe even take action.
Exactly. So here's something to chew on. We talked about how the economy's so strong right now and it's pulling some folks straight into the workforce, but what if that changes?
Yeah.
What happens if the economy slows down?
That's when things get really interesting. Suddenly, those folks who don't have education or training beyond high school, they might have a harder time finding jobs, Things change fast.
Yeah. It's like that saying, hindsight is 20/20.
Right.
You might look back and think, oh man, I wish I had done things differently.
Exactly. But it's not just about, trying to predict the future or anything. It's about thinking about what education means to you. What's it worth to you? And that goes for any kind of education, not just a four-year degree.
Right.
Right.
Are you the kind of person who likes to learn new things, pick up new skills, adapt to change? Because those are the things that make you valuable in any economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if this whole conversation has got you thinking about, your own path, or maybe the path of someone you care about, that's awesome.
That's a good sign.
It means we've sparked something.
Hmm.
And, we've only scratched the surface here. The source material, it goes into a lot more detail.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
So go check it out. Get curious. You might discover something that changes the way you think about education, work, the future, everything.
Keep learning, keep questioning, keep
Yeah.
diving deep.
And that is it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.